Okay, everyone, we're going to call tonight's meeting to order. I'd like to start with an approval of tonight's agenda. Can I have a motion to approve? Councillor Stevens and Councillor McIntosh. Questions or comments on tonight's agenda? All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Any disclosures of direct or indirect pecuniary interest tonight? Seeing none. We had no closed meeting of council, so we will move straight into the singing of our national anthem. I would ask that if you're able, you please rise.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
We would like to acknowledge the treaty lands and territory of the Williams Treaty Nations and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We also recognize that Dufferin County is the traditional territory of the Wendat and the Haudenosaunee and is home to many Indigenous people today. Tonight's meeting is being aired on public television and or streamed live and may be taped for later public broadcast or webcast. Your name is part of the public record and will be included in the minutes of tonight's meeting. Any member of the public connecting via telephone is reminded to press *6 to mute and unmute. Please remain muted until the chair requests comments or questions from the public. I'm going to now turn the chair over to the Deputy Mayor to take on our public meeting tonight.
Very good. Thank you, Your Worship. The mayor has already gone through how the phone calls will work and how to use the phone in terms of pressing *6. So I ask that you use those instructions. So I will read that ask anyone who wants to be notified of further consideration of this topic to submit their name, phone number, mailing address, and email address to clerksdepartment@orangeville.ca or call 519-941-0440 extension 2276 and reference Animal Control Bylaw. And note that any information collected is a matter of public record. And just before we start, I'd like to remind everyone that during question period, you're certainly welcome to ask your questions on the phone or in person here. However, this is a public meeting and staff or council may or may not provide the answer. However, those questions will be duly noted and brought forward as part of the process as we make our decisions going forward. So at this time, I will call on Carrie Cunningham, who is heads up our bylaw and property standards for corporate services. Ms. Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Bear with me. Great. Okay. Good evening, Deputy Mayor Taylor, Mayor Post, members of council, and the public. Tonight's presentation will provide an overview of the key regulatory changes that have been incorporated into the proposed animal control bylaw. On January 23, 2023, Council adopted a regulatory bylaw review work plan which identified the animal control bylaw and hens pilot program for review in 2023. The initial report and draft bylaw was presented to Council on January 22, 2024. Tonight's meeting is being held to obtain feedback from the public. Staff will report back to Council on the feedback received no sooner than April the 8th, 2024 meeting. The current animal control bylaw contains regulations for responsible pet ownership, dog licensing, and prohibited animals and was adopted in 2000. The most recent amendment to the bylaw was in 2020 to permit the keeping of hens. During the development of the proposed bylaw, Staff have created an administrative framework which includes regulations that ensure the safety of animals and the public, taken a consistent approach with the regulations and general licensing provisions set out in the town's current bylaw, completed a comprehensive review of best practices of surrounding municipalities' animal control bylaws, incorporated relevant legislation from the Municipal Act, Dog Owners Liability Act, and Provincial Animal Welfare Services Act, and have consulted with staff from the Orangeville branch of the OSPCA and community services staff. In 2020, Council adopted a hen permit bylaw which established regulations for the registration and keeping of hens. The keeping of hens was introduced as a 3-year pilot program, which ended December 31st, 2023. Prior to the expiry of the program, this bylaw was amended such that any permit that had been issued with an expiry date of December 31st, 2023 would be extended to May 31st, 2024, in order to allow sufficient time for staff to evaluate the pilot program in conjunction with the animal control bylaw review. The hen permit registration pilot program provided residents with the ability to obtain a permit to keep up to 3 hens on a residential lot containing a single detached dwelling or a semi-detached dwelling, provided all bylaw requirements were met and a yearly fee of $110 was paid. During the 3-year pilot program, the number of permits issued in 2021 were 3, in 2022 there were 5, and in 2023 there were 2. Minimal complaints were received in relation to hens during the pilot program. In 2021, 1 complaint was submitted regarding a registered hen coop, and in 2022, 1 complaint was received regarding a non-registered hen coop. In 2023, no complaints were received. In summary, the 3-year pilot program revealed that there was initial interest by residents. However, a minimal number of permits were issued. 2 complaints were submitted during this time frame. However, they were minor in nature and compliance was achieved. As a result, staff are recommending that due to the costs associated with the program's administration, that the licensing framework be discontinued and that the regulations of the hen permit bylaw be incorporated into the animal control bylaw, with the exception of the registration process and the fee component. The following slides provide a summary of the proposed key regulatory changes. Under general regulations, definitions have been added and modified in order to provide clarity and consistency with other town bylaws. A regulation has been added that will prohibit the disposal or burying of an animal on town property or land. Also added is a regulation that, unless otherwise permitted by town policy, other bylaws, or legislation, no person keeping an animal other than a service animal shall allow the animal to be in town facilities. And the expiry of a dog license has been changed from December 31st in each year to April 30th in each year. A new section has been included in the proposed bylaw that sets out regulations for cats, such that the number of cats being kept on a property or per dwelling unit would be limited to a maximum of 4. Owners will be required to ensure that there is a microchip or identification tag or similar means of identification that is always affixed to their cat, which contains their current contact information. Regulations that were set out in the hen permit bylaw for hens and hen coops have been incorporated into the proposed animal control bylaw, with the exception of the permit requirements and fee component. Regulations for leash-free parks have been incorporated into the proposed bylaw and include permitting dogs only, allowing a maximum number of 3 dogs per visit with an owner, prohibiting dogs from using the park if they are not vaccinated, not older than 4 months, or a female dog in heat, or if they pose a danger to other persons or dogs. Requiring an owner to remove a dog immediately if it shows aggressive behavior, or if an officer, town staff, or designate or authorized agent requests the removal of the dog for any reason. Ensuring a dog is on a leash when entering or exiting the park and that it is under control at all times. ensuring children within the park are supervised at all times, and that owners assume all risks by entering the leash-free park. During the review of municipal comparators, additional animals were added to the prohibited animal list in Schedule A of the proposed bylaw. Under the scientific animal class of aves, the common names of animals that have been added to the existing prohibited list include hawks and eagles, kiwis, emus, and cassowaries, pigeons and doves, cranes, flamingos, rheas, and penguins. Under the scientific animal class of mammalia, the common names of animals that have been added to the existing prohibited list include shrews, hares, and pikas, porcupines, prairie dogs, and nutria, and tree shrews. Permitted exceptions to the animal types in this class include African pygmy hedgehogs, domesticated rabbits, rodents such as hamsters, gerbils, chinchillas, and guinea pigs, which do not exceed 1,500 grams and are derived from a self-sustaining captive population. Under the scientific animal class of reptilia, the common names of animals that have been added to the existing prohibited list include iguanas, savanna monitors, pythons and boas, including anacondas, terrapins, tortoises, and turtles. Permitted exceptions to these animal types include non-venomous or non-poisonous lizards with a maximum length or not expected to exceed length of more than 70 centimeters, non-venomous or non-poisonous snakes with a maximum length or not expected to exceed length of more than 3 meters, and turtles derived from a self-sustaining captive population. And just as a note of clarification, there was a typo in the presentation that was presented online, wherein the measurements were noted as being less than 70 centimeters for lizards and less than 3 meters for snakes, and we've corrected that going forward. Schedule A also includes a prohibition for all venomous or poisonous animals and exotic animals that are not indigenous to Canada. A prohibited grandparented animal section has been added to provide a registration process for the lawful keeping of any animal that would be prohibited under the proposed bylaw where such animal was permitted prior to the prohibition. A person registering a prohibited grandparent animal shall provide an application to the clerk, provide proof that the prohibited animal was lawfully owned prior to the prohibition and within 90 days of the passing of the bylaw, provide the clerk with notification within 48 hours of any new location should the animal be moved, may keep the animal until it dies or has otherwise been disposed of, and is required to notify the clerk within 48 hours of the death. The clerk may impose terms or conditions on the keeping of any prohibited grandparented animal, and the status of this animal may be revoked at any time if the provisions of the bylaw are not met. The protective care and impoundment section provides an officer with the ability to take possession of an animal to provide protective care and are authorized to receive animals due to an eviction, incarceration, fire, or medical emergency or any other situation the officer deems appropriate, keep animals temporarily for a maximum of 5 days, charge the owner the current per diem sheltering fee and all costs for medical care when the animal is redeemed, and at the end of the 5-day period, unless other arrangements are agreed upon between the owner and the town, day 1 of the impound process would begin. Owners of animals seized or impounded, whether the animal is claimed from the pound or not, are liable for the payment of all fees for services and shall pay on demand by the pound keeper. In addition, the pound keeper may refuse the surrender or adoption of an animal for any reason. A section relating to wildlife has been included in the proposed bylaw. The proposed regulations prohibit a person from feeding wildlife on their property except a person feeding songbirds in a manner that the food is placed in a bird feeding device sufficiently above grade, the bird feeding device is on private property, any food spilled from the device is removed in a timely manner so that it does not attract other wildlife, and the device is kept in a sanitary condition and in good working order. No person shall permit a feeding device or other attractants to be left outside on any property, including town property or lands. And a person may feed songbirds on their property provided it does not create a nuisance by odor, sight, or otherwise. The prohibition for an owner to allow a dog to howl or bark excessively has been removed from the proposed animal control bylaw and has been included in Schedule A of the proposed noise bylaw. Schedule A of the proposed noise bylaw lists prohibitions which include activities that emit, make, or create noise and includes persistent barking, calling, or whining, or other similar persistent noise made by any domestic dog or any other animal kept or used for any purpose. The Dog Owners Liability Act contains rules for dog owners in Ontario. DOLA states that the owner of a dog is liable for damages resulting from a bite or attack by the dog on another person or domestic animal. DOLA contains provisions to commence proceedings in the Ontario Court of Justice against an owner of a dangerous dog and make an interim order requiring the owner to take specified measures for more effective control of a dog. Regulations for dangerous dogs and muzzle orders have not been included in the proposed bylaw, as staff can utilize DOLA for these types of matters, eliminating any hearings through the Dog Designation Appeal Committee of Council, as all matters would be heard in the Ontario Court of Justice. The Provincial Animal Welfare Services Act came into effect on January 1st, 2020, and sets out standards of care for animals, including tethering and shelter for dogs. PAWS inspectors provide enforcement across Ontario by carrying out inspections, conducting investigations, responding to animal welfare concerns, as well as providing outreach and education on animal care best practices. Concerns regarding animals that are in distress or are being neglected can be reported by the public to the Animal Protection Call Center, which is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. At this time, standards of care for animals, including tethering and shelter for dogs, have not been included in the proposed bylaw, as these matters are regulated, investigated, and enforced by the province through the Provincial Animal Welfare Services Act. For consistency with the town's existing regulatory bylaws, sections have been incorporated into the proposed bylaw, setting out requirements for the issuance of an order, enforcement and powers to enter, and penalty provisions. The issuance of an order to a person who is in violation of the bylaw will require them to discontinue the contravention and/or do the work or take action to correct the contravention. An officer may enter on land to carry out an inspection to determine if the bylaw, terms of a license, or an order have been complied with, or an officer may enter on any public or private property for the purpose of catching, confining, or transporting an animal at large. Also, the penalty provisions section of the bylaw has been updated for consistency with current legislation. It is important to note that there will be an opportunity for fines to be levied by bylaw staff, police, and OSPCA where warranted. Fees have been updated or included in Schedule B of the proposed bylaw. The current bylaw sets out fees for a dog license based on whether the dog is spayed or neutered. A spayed or neutered dog is currently $20 to license, and an unspayed or unneutered dog is $25 to license. These fees are applicable to an owner's first and second dog. If an owner licenses a third dog, the cost is $50. In the proposed bylaw, the fee for a dog license is $35, and a service animal would be exempt from this fee. Additional fees have been incorporated into the schedule to capture the cost of a replacement license, which is $10. Impound fees are set at $30 for the first impound, $60 for the second impound, $100 for the third impound, and $150 for the fourth impound. There are also fees for a quarantine or court-ordered impound, which is $100 per day for either a cat or a dog. The proposed animal control bylaw includes updated best practices to proactively meet the changing needs of the community and better protect both animals and the public. At this time, we would welcome any questions or feedback. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. Just before we move on, I think I have caused some trouble in the hen house here when I introduced you. So we know Kevin is the supervisor of bylaw, so I promoted you. So I hope you enjoy your new salary.
Thank you.
Anyway, it was an error on my part. I just don't want to be accused of dogging it through this presentation. Is that bad? Okay, carry on. So we will at this time, we'll invite David Vahi to come up and present. Is he not here? No. He's not here. Okay. Okay, so for item 6, oh, he is virtual? He's online? Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm here.
Wonderful.
Okay.
You have the floor.
Okay, let me just share my screen. Okay, there we go. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so today I'd just like to offer some feedback actually on the animal control bylaw, specifically as it relates to service animals, which there isn't much, there's very little mention of. But I just want to explain, we want to share some real concerns that we have, nothing major, just as a family, I'm an autistic father to an autistic son who has a service animal that we got recently. And of course, if you wonder who my son is, just look on the front page. So with that, I just would like to share some of these initial concerns that we had reading the bylaw. So the main concern is with getting, sorry, let me just write something here. Okay, main concern is just getting 2025 accessible. Obviously in a year, that was the goal for getting things accessible. But we think that having service dogs in the bylaw, service animals, stand corrected, means consulting families with service animals, trainers in the community, and accredited organizations. So we are the ones who bring the service animals into the community. And we thought, and this is the important thing, in collaboration with the OSPCA and Community Services and bylaw, we are the ones that live with them, train them, deal with the real circumstances. So just to share a little bit there on the screen, this is our own experience. This is not characteristic, I would say, of the experience. There's a chronology there just from start to finish. So our experience was with an ADI accredited service dog agency. ADI is Assistance Dog International. It's an international standard. There's only 2 organizations in Ontario that are recognized for that. There are, of course, several organizations that do train service dogs, and they can be trained independently. And as you can see, COVID obviously played a factor in there, and an unfortunate blizzard. So where we're coming from is just as a sort of lived experience when we read something and then think about it in real life. So the first thing, just to give you a sense of the severity of it, I found 2 laws, and one was mentioned already, PAWS, that relate to harming a service animal, a military dog, or a police dog. And just to give you an idea, there's criminal charges, there's jail time, there's fines, anywhere from thousands of dollars to 2 years in jail, upwards of, I think I've seen for corporations, it was $500,000. So just to give you the sort of severity of it. And what I did want to share and emphasize is the context, to contextualize sort of the magnitude of those 2 words, service dog. When you read them in the bylaw, it doesn't give you a sense of how immense those words are. So the question, of course, what visual indicators? And the reason I asked that, it is a big thing. If you read the AODA, it's there in orange. I bolded the main points of the law, excuse me. It's readily identified being used by a person relating to their disability as a result of visual indicators. And this is an important, I think it says, such as the vest or harness. And that's, I think, an important thing that I wanted to share, that the law doesn't say service dog has to have a vest. That's not the only way to tell a service dog. And again, this is one of those contentious things. And We just thought it was important that bylaw should establish a sort of working standard, encompassing the fact that there are organizations training dogs, people independently training dogs. You have dogs like Major there, who's my son's dog. He's wearing a organizational vest, and people can buy them off Amazon. And there's the attitude that, well, if you buy it off Amazon, it's a fake service dog. Well, what I have there on the screen, that is the law. So, I'm showing you two examples. There's obviously Major there with the vest. Another instance you see on the screen, that is actually an ID that was given to my son because of the accreditation with ADI. So when my wife passed the field test about a week ago, we were issued this just also to show. So, the question in my brain was, well, if I put this on the dog, is this a visual indicator? It indicates his disability. It indicates he's a service dog. I'm not saying it is, it was just a question in our mind. And then moving on to the second point was, what document? So of course, in the law, it says that it's documentation from a regulated health professional. And I didn't list all of the professionals in there, but it's psychotherapists, any sort of thing. But what I wanted to emphasize was that quote at the top, which in Ontario, service animals do not have to be trained or certified by a recognized disability-related organization. An average person can train dogs in Ontario. Other provinces, Alberta, it's very strictly regulated. Here, not as much, which gives a bit of an opportunity for all the different concerns, disabilities. And just as an example of a document, this is a gray area, but I just wanted to share this. This was actually a letter that was provided to us by our agency when we had the issues with Orangeville Transit refusing to accept the vest alone as a visual indicator. And as it turned out, when we did get the letter, the drivers weren't very concerned with seeing it. Does it fall within the definition? Part A, maybe. It does indicate, my son's has disabilities paired with this service dog. But is it Part B? Not really. And then the next concern was, of course, with dogs and service dogs. If you look at the bylaw, the definition, those three definitions, Major service dog fits all three. So, of course, the concern with that was just, again, a guideline or a decision hierarchy for service dogs. So when would bylaw consider, when's a service dog a service dog? When is he just a plain old dog? Or is he always a service dog as long as he fulfills the requirements? Obviously, it depends on the law. But there was an equal concern, we thought, with, well, what if happens if you separate the service dog from the person that they're supposed to be tending to? We thought there was that risk for potential human rights complaint. Not saying that it is, it was just a thought. But we were especially concerned with, in case the dog gets seized or impounded and somebody mistakenly thinks the dog's at large. And the main thing just being, again, going back to the Human Rights Commission, they were stressed, for service providers, in this example, they were talking about people providing medical documentation, that they should not use their own assumptions and observations to second guess this verification. There is opportunity. We've had it where people will ask, they see the vest, but they ask and say, well, what does he do? And we explain, Human Rights has said that's okay. Which leads to the next concern, which most people would probably not consider a concern, which is microchips and licenses. So where this comes up as an issue is just there are many different organizations and independent trainers who place dogs with clients. And ownership is, not the same across the board. So in our case, the microchip says he's owned by the organization. So we don't retain ownership, but by bylaw definition, and because he's registered for a dog license, we're the owners. So the concern, of course, was, well, which one takes precedence? Is it the microchip? Is it the dog license? Is it the owner? Is the dog license owner? Does it depend on scenario? These were just questions we asked ourselves and we thought we'd bring forward. And then also the actual section that sort of started this was 6.3, which talked about 6.1 and 6.2 not applying to a service animal while under the control of its handler and engaged in its duties. So now, depending on how you read 6.2, how I think it was intended, and again, this is just my interpretation, that it's a bunch of coordinate clauses, that there's all these conditions that must be met to fulfill that non-application. But again, I just sort of thought, well, let me share some ideas that just popped into my head when I read it initially. So there were some things that, like, service dogs can go leash free with a trained handler. And that sort of was backed up by the fact that there's nothing that actually says in the law service dog must be on a leash. It must be under control. You know, there are some people I know that they are under control of it, but it needs to be loose in case it needs to get help or that sort of thing. Another issue that we thought, well, you know, based on this, how I'm reading it, the dog can never be considered running at large as long as he fulfills AODA. Obviously, I mean, that's would depend on the presence of a person being there. But, and then the last and the most serious question was, you know, is it the onus on bylaw to establish that it's a service dog or not a service dog? You know, if there's signs that it could be a service dog, you know, do we not necessarily seize or impound it and try to return it to the owner? These were just questions. And again, it's not any sort of criticism. It's just a thought that we wanted to share. And of course, the last one, which may be a little confusing, just so about a month ago, Tony DeLise actually presented a potential policy, upcoming policy to Access Orangeville. I've recorded it there from based on my wife's notes. And we just thought it would be a great opportunity for cohesion or alignment between policy and bylaw, because you know, we've got these two things that are being tabled that involve service dogs. Part of that concern was from the fact that, from what I could see, in the last 7 years, there have been at least 5 recorded incidents involving service dogs on Orangeville Transit. And the thought was maybe, you know, we've learned a lesson from this, that moving forward, it's less likely that something like that is going to happen. So there's one example is there from newspaper 7 years ago. There was a story that Tony DeLise told at Access Orangeville about a dog that sounded sort of like a fake service dog. And then 3 that happened to our family on Orangeville Transit, which generated this policy. And so for that is everything.
That's very good. Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Vahi. We appreciate that. If you could stay on the line, there may be some questions come your way from council or from the public, if you wouldn't mind, sir. Is that okay?
Not a problem.
Okay, thank you very much. So at this time, 8.4 and 8.5 are letters from Max Waters and Brian Smith, and I'm looking for a mover and a seconder to receive those documents. Can I have that? Councillor McIntosh, Councillor Andrews, all in favor? Very good. Thank you, everyone. So at this time, I would invite questions or comments from the public regarding this matter. And if you are a member of the public connecting via telephone, you're reminded to press *6 before you address to mute and unmute. So is there anyone on the line that would like to speak to this? No? No one on the line? Okay. Would any member of the public like to speak to this item? Ms. Claridge, did you want to come up? Just use your cat-like reflexes to come up to the microphone. Can you state your name and address? And
C. Claridge, 44 Sherwood Street, Orangeville.
Very good, thank you. And please go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Mayor and Council. I am pleased to speak after Mr. Vahi because I'm coming from a slightly different perspective, and I'm glad I didn't have to speak to the issues of service dogs directly. And I should preface comments that I'm speaking here personally and not on behalf of any organization. Some of you may know that I have for the last number of years been volunteering for a national service dog organization, fostering a number of dogs. And I would say the first one is already out working as an autism assistance dog, and my most recent one is in school right now for facility support and autism assistance. And I currently have a 6-month-old with me. So I read with interest the amendments to the animal control bylaw as it impacts those of us that are in the community trying to provide assistance to the service dog organizations. As background, it is interesting to note that the organization I work for does provide service dogs free of charge to the ultimate handler, but it does cost $35,000 from birth to training to raise those dogs. And without government funding, it does rely on donations and volunteers like myself to raise those dogs. And my responsibility as a foster is to not only feed and raise the dog, but to expose the dog to the community, socialize it, and do some basic training. And I'm also responsible for a lot of expenses along the way past the veterinary and food costs that are covered by the organization. So my ask of council today is to consider a couple of issues. One is the licensing fee. I'm pleased to see that the requirement to pay for a non-neutered or non-spayed dog is being eliminated, because I certainly was slightly annoyed to have to pay the non-neutered fee for a puppy who is unable to be neutered and is not in my control to make those decisions. But I would like to ask that service dogs in training with recognized organizations possibly be exempted from the licensing fees. In speaking with fellow fosters, there is not any consistency in municipalities across Ontario, but a number of them do treat service dogs in training similar to a service dog and do exempt those dogs from licensing fees. Those still require licensing and production of confirmation that they are with a registered organization. And I would ask that similar consideration be given to the breeders that are selected by those organizations, because they are left in foster situations until they are ultimately spayed and or neutered and adopted out. I was also looking to see that part of my responsibility is to take the dog out into the community, and I would like to see that service dogs in training be allowed to enter town facilities, because it is very important for them to get that experience in the community. Service dogs in training are not able to experience any of the rights of a service dog, and we are always at the behest of any organization or any store that we go into, and hope that they will allow us to do that training. And also one of the exemptions I would like to look at, the definition for a owner includes those who are keeping a dog temporarily. And I will admit that I have temporarily housed more than my own personal dog and the current dog in training. And the technical reading of the bylaw does require that each time I have one of those dogs for a weekend, a week, whatever, that I should be licensing that dog as well. So I would like some consideration for an exemption in such circumstances. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Ms. Claridge. Two things, if I could. First of all, you do wonderful things in the community, so thank you very much for everything you do. And number two, thank you very much for sharing I know it's your passion, and being here tonight, because it's great when citizens come and share their stories and share things that they're knowledgeable about. So thank you for doing that. Appreciate you being here. If you could stay as well, there might be questions for you as we go on. Okay. So at this point in time, I'd like to invite questions from. Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have anybody else? Oh, thank you. James, did you want to come up? Thank you, Joe. Okay. Being policed by Councillor Andrews here. I appreciate that very much. It sounded a little mousy in the gallery, so I thought we were going to have to wait. Yeah. James, if you want to state your name and address and then go ahead, please. Sure.
James Jackson, 50 Carlton Drive, Orangeville, Ontario. Thank you for letting me address to you tonight. My concern is actually about with the leash issue. Like for somebody like myself, I would love to have a service dog, and trust me, I wish I couldn't even afford to get one. But my issue is I have left side issues. So with my right side, my good side, I use my walking stick. From asking this guy to hold onto a leash and hold onto a dog is pretty hard for me to do so. If a dog is properly trained, then it shouldn't need a leash and it shouldn't wander away from the person that it's servicing. So I'm just wondering if we can even take that into consideration about for somebody like myself, of having that exception of not needing a leash. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Ugolini? Okay, Mr. Werner, do you want to come up? Just snake your way through the chairs and come up to the podium.
My name's Greg Werner. I live at 212 Kensington Place in Orangeville, Ontario. At least 3 people on council are familiar with my dog, but I'm not here about my dog. I'm here because, and by the way, thank you very much for giving me that copy of it, but it's been totally changed since I got it. So half of that stuff is gone now. But anyway, so a couple of things. There are 6 pages on dogs, 2 pages on hens and and roosters, 1 item on cats. In this day of inclusion, equality, that is a real slam against dog owners. I have 5 cats in my neighborhood. 2 orange tabbies, 1 gray tabby, a black and white, and a gray and white, who frequent my yard quite honestly almost every day. I work in my garden in the spring and I find lovely treats left for me. Cat owner does not have to pick up after their cat. Cat owner doesn't need to license their cat. We suggest that you chip your cat. Wow, I should have got a cat. But I like cats, but dogs are a much better fit for me. I'm impressed, by the way, because when I first got my copy, there was nothing about exotic animals, so I'll just drop that one. The other thing that bothers me is licensing. Your proposal is to increase licensing by 75%. That's not fair. That's not fair to anybody in this day and age who has got a dog. It goes from $20, I buy that thing, to $35. That's an increase of 75%. You might want to think about that again. Cost of dog food's gone up for dog owners. Cost of everything's gone up for dog owners. Independent veterinary clinics are being bought up by conglomerates and they're controlling the price. That's happened to 3 in the Orangeville area. Have you considered a year-to-year tagging system instead of saying April the 30th? When I first got my dog, that was in October of 2019. I had it licensed the end of November and was informed that comes January, you're going to pay another $25. So I've just paid $25 for a month and a half, and I'm going to get a full year for the next $25. You've got computers. Everybody's on file in the computer at the SPCA office. Can't you just go through the computer? Okay, all these people are due in December. Let's send them an email to remind them. Not difficult. It's not difficult at all to do that. Have you considered a one-time fee? Up the fee to $100. Up the fee to $50. Friends of mine in Mississauga say they pay a one-time fee of $70. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they tell me. One-time fee for their dog, for the life of the dog. Now, I know that the SPCA, or I suspect that the SPCA or the shelter in Orangeville relies heavily on the licensing fee. Used to be, when I first got dogs in this town collected the license money and then distributed it. I understand that because the Ontario SPCA is sort of taken some of the fundraising away from local shelters. Have you considered having a clinic where dogs can be tagged, chipped? Charge $100 for it. Then there's no need to buy a 4-inch, 1/8 inch piece of aluminum and stamp it with a number. That's a lot of money that you'd save just by chipping the dog. Have it. Town is holding a chipping clinic today. It's going to cost you $100. It's a one-time effort for your dog. Dog gets loose, guy comes around, grabs your dog, boom, boom, boom. Just so you know, and Councillor Taylor knows about it, I haven't had really good luck with the local agent for the SPCA lately. The purpose of a license is twofold: finding lost dogs owners, and raising money for the shelter. That's the way I see it. Maybe I'm wrong. Nobody's told me I'm not. As towards the wild animal portion of the bylaw, I think that's a great move. Coyotes are becoming prevalent when I walk my dog at 6 o'clock in the morning. The two that were ripping a rabbit apart in somebody's backyard were not a nice sight. I knew someone once put out salt licks behind his fence so the deer would come in. Well, deer came in and coyotes came in and mess was left behind. So I think that's really good. I hope it goes as far as telling people don't give peanuts to squirrels, because my feeders, my flower baskets in the spring are filled with peanuts. It's like Halloween. So it's a great bylaw, and I understand it, and I really do like the changes to it. The wild animal thing's good, and I didn't realize you had put in about reptiles and snakes and all those other things, and that wasn't on the copy that I received. So those answer all of my questions. But I would just ask you to think about the tagging of dogs, a 75% increase.
Thank you very much.
Doug Ford only gave nurses 1%.
Yeah, appreciate that very much. Thank you for being here. Okay, any other further questions? Anyone? Any further questions from anyone? Anyone? Oh, Mr. Smith, go ahead.
I guess I'm not fast like a cheetah. All right. Okay. Matthew Smith, 38 McCarthy Street. I wanted to bring up a point about the wildlife feeding portion of it, because the proposed bylaw says only songbirds can be fed, and their taxonomy, or whatever the scientific nomenclature is passeriforms. But a hummingbird, which is a frequent sight in Orangeville, is not considered passeriform. It's considered a trochilidae. So it's a different classification of bird. So according to the bylaw, we wouldn't be able to feed hummingbirds anymore. So I just wanted to point that out. The other thing I just want to know is a water feature, like a small little fountain. Is that considered feeding wildlife? Because I have one in my backyard. I'm gonna bring it out in a couple months, and it runs from basically when frost ends to frost starts. So it runs all the time. Is that considered feeding wildlife? So those are just the things I wanted to bring up. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Mr. Ugolini, did you want to speak to this matter? Share your name and address, please, sir.
Ugolini Rick, Cedar Drive, Orangeville. I'd like to talk about the chicken bylaw, backyard chickens. And I've been doing some research, and apparently a lot of municipalities are pulling permits. Toronto, permits have been suspended because of avian flu. And how far is Toronto from here? 45 kilometers? Mississauga, no longer allowing backyard chickens. It just wasn't worth the effort, the time, and the money, because they didn't have any more permits handed out than we did. And they have a population of over 800,000 people. And I also have something here from Public Health Ontario, reducing health risks associated with backyard chickens. And it gives a list of things that people should do who have backyard chickens, but I doubt it very much. Like wearing dedicated clothing, shoes to avoid cross-contamination, refraining from kissing and snuggling a live chicken, okay? Maintaining cleanliness. I don't know if the people that had permits here have kept their coops clean. I guess bylaw could only answer that, and the people that have the chickens. I don't know. Preventing contact between backyard chickens and wild birds and animals. I guess that would include coyotes. And it just goes on and on and on. Like there's 15 pages and of all the risks associated with backyard chickens. Now, once this bylaw is repealed and there's no permit fees, is Orangeville residents going to go nuts and just have backyard chickens? Because now that it doesn't cost anything. And the way it works is, if you don't tell I have 20 chickens, I'll give you a dozen eggs every week. It's just my comment there. But there's also like Springwater Township. I don't know if you know where that is, just north of Barrie. They've recommended, I think that they've repealed their bylaw and are not charging anymore, but at least they are going to have a registry where if there is a problem, people can be contacted with these backyard chicken coops and dealt with. And that's about all I have to say, really. Why do we need a farmer's market if everybody's growing their own vegetables and their eggs? Anyway.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ugolini. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other further questions from the gallery? Yes, sir, please come forward. Could you state your name and address for everyone?
Yep. My name's Brett Lagerquist, and 61 Brookhaven in East Garitraxa, but I'm a local business owner.
Welcome.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to Matthew for talking about clarification of songbirds in the proposed bylaw. Obviously, as Matthew has stated, hummingbirds are not considered technically a songbird, so obviously there needs to be a little bit more clarification in the bylaw. Also, I think it would be good to clarify also like what exactly is considered wildlife. What's an acceptable level of seed underneath a bird feeder? Because that was included in there. There's, you know, a certain level of like cleanliness that needs to be maintained, which is good birding practice anyways. So yeah, I just wanted to add that. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much for participating here tonight. Anyone else? Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll turn it over to council. Would any member of council like to speak to this item? Yes, Councillor Andrews, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Taylor. I want to thank the general public who have, in fact, provided their comments this evening, including the presentation that also was provided to council. This was a follow-up to Mr. Smith's comment, and in fact, I posed a question to bylaw earlier today regarding the issue of including hummingbirds. I had a number of residents who reached out regarding hummingbird feeders and the declaration or the description of feeders. And I think that, you know, that has been adjusted if I'm not corrected, or if I'm correct in saying so. So for the sake of that, for the public consumption, I'm not sure if there's anything else that needs to be added, but through Deputy Mayor Taylor, maybe we can get just a brief update on that.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Kevin, do you want to speak to that item?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, what I can tell council and members of the public, hummingbirds are now safe. So we made the amendment this afternoon. So, and as far as the feeders are concerned, there's no prohibition on not feeders, but the watering. Bird bass, there's no restrictions on bird bass.
Good. Wonderful. Thank you.
I also have just one more question. Thank you. And this was also based on a couple of calls from residents. And again, this falls under a class that I'm not familiar with, but it is known as a mini pig. Potbelly pig. These would be the small pigs that I guess they're also called pygmy pigs. And I know that traditionally these would be found in outside of a urban center. They would be more in a rural setting. But there was an example that was provided to me by the BC SPCA that also highlighted the differences or the allowances under their bylaw that outside of an urban center it wasn't allowed. But again, just for the sake of clarification, because again, these residents have either considered ownership or have had ownership of these types of pigs.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Did you want Kevin to speak to that, or? Yeah. Kevin, if you could.
That's a great question. Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I don't believe pigs are even, they're not prohibited. I don't see them on the prohibited list. Correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie.
One,
You can research that and circle back.
okay. Mr. Smith, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I'll just comment. There will always be one-offs, whether it's a hummingbird or a pig, there will always be one-offs. We can't identify every single animal. I think our bylaw staff are well-trained and would use a reasonability test in any type of application like this. So I if people have concerns, they can email them in as we normally do. But I think creating a all-inclusive list of every species and every form of species would be very difficult to do.
Okay, very good. Councillor Andrews, does that kind of answer it for you? Excellent. Any further questions? Mayor Post.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I have two questions, actually. One was, when was the last time that the fee schedule for the licensing updated? So how long, I know that Mr. Werner had said it's a 75% increase, but if the last time we did it was 1985, then I think that's reasonable. But if it was just done a couple of years ago, maybe that is a little much. I don't need the answer right now, just a question. Additional question would be, was there any discussion at looking at a licensing framework for cats? Mr. Werner's comments are not the first that we've heard at council. We also received correspondence with a similar concern about cats roaming in neighborhoods. And I'm just wondering if there was any thought or if there's any municipalities who have done a cat licensing program and how that's worked, and if maybe that's something we could consider as part of this for framework.
Thank you very much, Mayor Post. Any further questions from council? Okay, I just have one, and it's regarding coyotes. And I'm just curious, like in my mind, we're overrun. I am a hugger. I love trees. I love animals. So I'd hate to see anything happen. Yet at the same time, I think people are threatened. And the way that we are living, we are an urban center within a rural environment, really. Like there's nobody else around us. So our propensity to have these animals walking up and down Spencer Avenue, or you name the other street. I mean, this is the latest complaint that I got, that we've got these animals out. I'm wondering if there should be something done about that in this bylaw, or if we wanted to do something perhaps more aggressive or longer term that would address what is becoming an increasing problem. And the last comment I would make is there's parks in town, that, and I can carry this offline, but, people are concerned about dawn and dusk, or I guess that's, dawn and dusk, about being in these parks, especially when they're closer to rural areas, so on the perimeter of the town. Again, I'm not expecting a response today. I just wanted to publicly bring that forward, that it's something that I think at some point soon we need to react to. Councillor Andrews, did you want to speak to that? I'm sorry.
I did, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and the only reason, and I would like-minded on this, I know that in my neighborhood I've had some examples of coyote running parallel to the green space area that we have. And I recall it would be probably 7-8 years ago, the county of Dufferin, which both you and Mayor Post sit at, representing our municipality, did some investigation on looking at the best way to monitor, manage the coyotes coming closer towards an urban center. And there was some discussion on how they were going to resolve that, but I have not heard anything since. And again, this would be pre our term on council, even the previous term on council, but I was there attending a larger scale meeting about this. So it has been brought to a number of our attentions of coyote running close to school areas. Even the dog park that we have on Hanson, there have been examples there because of the green space that's parallel to that area near Starview. So that may be something for us to consider, because we have unfortunately brought coyote closer to our community because of lack of food, temptation, and if we are feeding some of the wildlife in those peripheral green areas, that may be a temptation for the coyote to be a little more aggressive.
Very good. Thank you very much, Councillor Andrews. Our clerk has kindly reminded me that Dufferin County does have a program on that. So we should do some reading and research and make sure we understand that going forward. Okay, last call. Anyone further? No, seeing none, I'll turn this meeting back over to Mayor Post. Thank you, Mayor Post.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Taylor. We will move into the portion of the meeting which is for bylaws. The recommendation today is that the bylaws listed below be read 3 times and finally passed. Tonight we just have the one, which is the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Orangeville for tonight. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Andrews and Deputy Mayor, all in favor? And that's carried unanimously. And a motion to adjourn. Councillor Stevens and Councillor McIntosh, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you all for coming to tonight's public meeting. Have a wonderful evening.